We love when you're on the show, Coach, because you always bring a lot of joy and a lot of knowledge to the listeners. So I'm going to jump right in. Well, when you look on the tape of what you saw from college and the preseason, what do you see when you see Caleb Williams?
I was very impressed. We do an extensive I've been to every combine since they've had it there. I still do extensive work on the draft. I was very impressed, watching him coming out. What he's got, I mean, he's a superb athlete, but he's really, as far as a quarterback, he's innovative, he's creative, and the other thing is when you look at quarterbacks, a lot of times you've got to see what they have surrounding him, and his off-schedule plays that sometimes he was forced to make there at SC. A lot of guys can go off schedule to throw, but this guy can be off schedule and still be accurate. A lot of guys, as they start moving and move off of their original launch platform, lose a little bit of accuracy. This guy does none of it. I think he very well deserved the first pick in the draft. He's going to be an exciting quarterback in this league, I really feel like, for a long time to come.
So before your defense takes the field against a guy like that, how do you coach it? How do you say, hey, just because you flush him, you doesn't mean you've won this play yet, because until the whistle blows, you're in danger?
Yeah, well, all of my years of calling defenses in this league, when you've got a quarterback that can do that, I mean, you can't just have one rush pattern against him. That's extremely important. And then you've got to marry your rush and your coverage, because because once you flush him, if you flush him without a real fish hook plan, then the problems that you have is playing plaster in the back end. And with the receivers that he's got available right now, that's a big challenge. So anytime you've got a quarterback that is able to escape but keep his eyes downfield, and as I said earlier, can be accurate on the move, then that puts stress on your defense. So you have to understand down and distance, you have to understand field position, and then when you're calling defenses against someone like this, you've got to vary up what you do, because you can't just present him one picture, because you start presenting him one picture, then he's probably going to hurt you.
You guys in Tennessee had last year a rookie quarterback trying to make things happen in Will Levis. He's still the QB of this team. Where do you think he got better?
Well, with Brian Callahan coming in here, I mean, he is, all young quarterbacks coming in, they're going to have a lot to learn, because regardless of their skill ability, they've not seen what they're going to see presented week in and week out from NFL defenses. But what he worked on fundamentally was just, and most young quarterbacks have to do this, is work on being able to quiet their feet in the pocket, to be able to take what the defense gives you, to be able to know that accuracy and being able to manipulate the chains is just as important as going for the big play. The majority of the time, you learn all of those things. And look, you can't manufacture experience in this league. And especially at that position, I mean, every play, really, seriously, once you get to the film with them, is a learning experience. And so, I mean, he was thrown into the fire last year with it, but with this off season now, with Brian Callahan and with his with this new system that he's in, and plus, Rand Carthon has gotten him a lot of help as far as receivers around him also. He's developing. He's still a developing young quarterback, but he's a lot like the guy that you guys got there. He's blessed with a lot of natural arm talent, and that goes a long way in helping these young guys as they're learning the nuances of being a quarterback in the National Football League.
When you have young quarterbacks that will go through some of those struggles, and I love what you're saying about the experience of it, what's key to keep them on track and not get too down when they don't have success?
Yeah, well, then that's what you have to do. You've got to be sure that as I said, you talk about your feet being quiet in the pocket and being able to maintain that balance. You've also got to be able to maintain that balance mentally, because there's going to be ups and downs playing quarterback in this league, because all the defenses that you play week in and week out, I mean, their job. And I've been a defensive coach in this league for a long time. Your primary job is to affect that quarterback, one way or the other. That's what you do. And so they've got to understand that you've got to be resiliency is a huge, huge part of being able to master playing quarterback in this league, and the resiliency comes from it, from being able to sometimes bounce back from something that happens, play to play, because you can't carry the negative with you, especially as a quarterback, because then that emanates throughout your huddle, it emanates throughout your sideline. So you just have a lot to learn, and the thing that you do need to learn though is a medium perspective that you've got to take on it every time you go out there, and it starts in practice, because you've got to practice, with a purpose, just like you're going to have to play. So all of that goes into it with a young quarterback.
So Jonathan Simmons now is making news saying he's going to knock the nail polish off of Caleb Williams. And Caleb Williams is very clear about how he likes to paint his nails, and he thinks it's cool, and that's fine, and he's comfortable with it. And yet this gets down to that sort of the personal a bit. As a head coach, is this something in your players that you would discourage, that you would encourage, or neither?
Well, it's Jeffrey Simmons.
Excuse me.
You don't have to say excuse me. Look, I've been on the radio long enough now to know we say a lot of things.
Live radio.
But people know what we're saying. I know exactly what you're talking about. Look, Jeffrey Simmons. Let me just say this. Let me say this about that. The years I coached at the Bears with that defense, this would have been mild with the things they used to say about opponents. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it's part of the give and take in this league, and I'm sure that all of that stuff. I never discouraged it as a defensive coach in this league, or as when I was a head coach. I mean, everything takes care of itself once you step across that white line of the sideline, and so all of this, anything that anybody says really doesn't have much of a bearing on the football game. We all know when it's decided, when it's kicked off.
Having to replace Derrick Henry is not easy, considering what he's meant to the Titans as a franchise. How will the Titans go about trying to do that?
Well, this is a different brand of offense now than anybody really, has experienced from the Oilers/Titans to the time that that they've been here. I mean, you can start with Earl Campbell, in Houston, then you go to Eddie George here, then you go to CJ 2K and Chris Johnson, and then you go to Derrick Henry. So it's always been a one running back centric offense, much like we were with the Bears with Walter. When I was there. Now this is a different offense. It's a different form. You've got two running backs that have similar skill sets now, so it's really a different brand of offense than anybody here that has followed this franchise, both from the Oilers to the Titans, have been used to. So I mean, the entire offensive scheme has changed. And as I've been with I wasn't with Earl Campbell, but I was with Eddie George. I was with CJ 2K here. I was here with Derrick Henry. Great backs. I think the time will tell that they were all really, really great backs. But this offense is an entirely different offense, and so they've got two very similar backs now. So that's how they're going to replace it, with a new scheme.
You mentioned Brian Callahan, and I didn't know until recently that Bill Callahan, his father, is the offensive line coach, and it has to make for a pretty interesting sideline dynamic. We know that father-son coaching is common in the NFL.
It's usually inverted.
And it's not necessarily that common to have the dad on the headset with you, and I'm interested to know how they plan on managing sort of the in-game relationship here.
Well, it's been great. Really, it's the first time in history that this has happened. And and when Brian started interviewing for head coaching jobs, I mean, his dad, I think was ever reluctant to say that he would go with him. But when this one came up, and then he saw the opportunity, I mean, it's been great. Of course, Bill Callahan is the top tier of offensive line coaches. I've been around some great ones in my career. Started out with Dick Stanfill when I was on the staff with him there in Chicago. Was here on the staff with Mike Munchak. Bill Callahan is really, I mean, he's right there at the top of any of them in this league, and everybody recognizes that. But but to be able to be in a unique situation where now you can be a major factor of helping your son in his first shot at being a head coach in this league, it's a really good story, but it's also a really great addition to your coaching staff.
Coach Mack, you know from being here in Chicago how starved people are to have a great quarterback. The excitement here is crazy with people wanting to see what this is going to look like. And it looks like the Bears, from my estimation, have done a really good job of giving Caleb Williams some weapons. You know, the Rome Odunze drafted him 9th, having Keenan Allen, one of the best technician wide receivers in the game, having DJ Moore out there. It seems like they've put together a really good squad around him. Can you even imagine like what it would be like if it turns out that he is a great quarterback for the Bears as a franchise?
Well, I can imagine. I lived it. I lived it there with Jimmy Mack. I know. I mean, look, Chicago, you know, people always ask me, Coach Mack, how was it? How were those 10 years you were there in Chicago? You know, it's especially when the Bears were really running hot. I said, it was football Camelot. That's one of the legacy franchises in the National Football League, and those are legacy fans. I mean, those tickets passed down and passed down. I'm very well aware of that. I've told people here this is going to be an outstanding atmosphere. As I said, I loved every minute that I coached there, but I also understand the passion. And you're right. And I think that they've been looking for this type of an excitement from the quarterback position probably since Jimmy Mack. And so it's going to be very unique. And I know it's going to be alumni weekend. I'm looking forward to seeing a lot of those guys. I do a television hit for the broadcast here on the field before the game. I'm looking forward to seeing all those guys. Tom Thayer told me that he's presenting the Hall of Fame ring for Steve McMichael, you know, to his family. I mean, Chicago Bears, when the Chicago Bears are rolling, guys, I lived it for 10 years. You guys have lived it. I mean, that's a fabulous, fabulous fan base. It's going to be all of that come Sunday.
Dave, I'm curious, too, from your perspective as a defensive coach like Matt Eberflus is, how far you want to take it in practice and how this week might be a little different, especially with a rookie quarterback. That I know that a defensive coach, you want to win every snap. You want your defense to win every possession. And you want to show this kid, you know, you're going to see stuff you've never seen before, young man, and here it comes. How hard do you coach your defense? How hard do you dial it up against him the week of the game?
Well, I mean, it's no different than anything else. Look, when you're preparing for quarterbacks in the National Football League, you've got to be on point every play. I coached defense in this league for a lot of years. You got to play the game. You got to play the game. You got to be able to, especially a first ball game where neither team really knows quite what to expect because you got a lot of new on both sides. You've got to be able to accept the game as it comes. Try to dictate as much as you can, but you got to play within yourself the game. You can't get over and above where the game is at the time, and so it's extremely important. They all know. I mean, these players across the league, they're intelligent. They watch tape. They know the challenge, but they also know the challenge of being able to play solid and also be able to communicate. Communication in the National Football League defensively is at a premium. And it's especially at a premium when you're just you're a new group coming together against basically a new group that you're going against. So it's that whole cat and mouse game that you have to play, and it really presents itself, especially in a first ball game.
You mentioned Mongo, and he was one of the guys keeping guys off of your linebackers. What's this been like for you to see him? People recognize how great of a player he was, and him getting the opportunity to go into the Hall of Fame.
So it made my heart so happy. I mean, Ming was a dude. I've been fortunate to coach with some great defensive players in my 31-year coaching career in this league. But Steve McMichael and Dan Hampton, and believe me, Mike Singletary knew it too. I can remember going into the training room after every game, and McMichael and Hampton to be sitting each on a different table in the training room with ice bags everywhere at every joint in their body, smoking a cigar, and I'd walk in and just tell them thank you. And I can remember, McMichael every day, every time I did that, he said, "Yeah, you're welcome, rookie. You're building your career on our bodies. You're welcome." I mean, Ming was one of the best dudes in the history of the world, one of the smartest defensive tackles I've ever been around. If I ever, from Mike Singletary, when I could talk to him during the game to find out what was going on up front from tackle to tackle, he was perfect. But if I really wanted to find out early on what was happening in that center guard triangle, Steve McMichael was a brilliant football player. I know the persona. I know everything about Ming the Merciless, about Mongo. But when you started talking ball with Steve McMichael, he was a master of the game. I was so happy. I mean, just there'll be a lump in my throat when he gets that ring presented to his family, because very deservedly so. There's more than a handful of guys on that team that I was associated with that are now in the Hall of Fame, plus 2 coaches with Coach Ditka and Coach Stanfield. Very well deserving. I mean, look, you talk about a bear through and through. That was Ming.
It's funny that I reacted and I heard myself laughing at the story. Rook, you're building your career on our bodies, and I sort of laughed sardonically. And now I hear myself do it. And I think, we see it now. It's literally true that he gave his physical being to the game of what he's done. And it does hit home. And there is that melancholy. There is, I think, for a lot of people when they see what he's fighting and the condition that he's in, and seeing this juxtaposed with the honor that the idea of sacrifice is really first and foremost for why people choose to do exactly what he said he was doing.
No, right. I mean, look, everybody that is in this business, coaches and players, you've got to give yourself heart and soul to it, or you're not going to survive in it. We've got a player here that I coached when I was here, Tim Shaw, that's fighting the same battle. And Tim, Tim was in my linebacker room, when he first came in here, and he's still at practice. And it's just, look, the bonds that you form in this league between player and coach, they get stronger as the years go on. And so I'm in touch, quite a bit with Dan Pompei. And Dan Pompei, I know, was a huge proponent of with the Hall of Fame of Steve getting in there. I mean, it's so well deserved. And it just, as I said, there will be a lump in my throat at halftime, because I'm going to pay attention to this ceremony at halftime, because it means a lot to all of us that were involved with Steve McMichael and what he meant to the Chicago Bears and to the National Football League.
Coach, we appreciate you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Guys, it's my pleasure. Like I said, feels like old times being on the score again.
That is Dave McGinnis on the Bernstein and Holmes Show on Sports Radio 670 The Score.
I told you, we did the X and O stuff, and that's cool, but that's just football.
Now you ready for kickoff?
I've been ready.
I know.
And when Ray told us that Coach Mack was going to be on the show, I was like, giddy up, let's ride.